Thanks for being here with me today in video form. However, you contribute just by watching, by subscribing, by leaving me comments. I really enjoy your comments and knowing what works for you. And also to those of you that have donated and that are my Patreons that really allow me to keep this channel going. Thank you very much. Today's practice is about the thoracic spine and about mobilizing it. And I want you to take a moment to think of your spine like a really yummy sandwich. And you have the two pieces of bread, which is your cervical spine or your neck, and the other one is your lumbar spine or your low back. And those two parts of our spine generally get a lot of attention, but it's really just the bread. The meat of the sandwich, or if you're a vegetarian like me, the vegetables of the sandwich, maybe it's an ice cream sandwich, whatever you want to say, the really yummy part of the sandwich is your thoracic spine. And unfortunately, when it doesn't have the ability to move the way it needs to, the two ends will suffer. So, by the way, if you have something called thoracic outlet syndrome, I'm also doing a separate video just for that, and that will come out next week. But what we see a lot now too is people that have what's called kyphosis, which is the rounded back here, and that all has to do with this is what I'm going to call from now on the T-spine. The T-spine rounding, right? So this practice is going to help us to come out of that a little bit, to find some movements, but also know that in yoga, what we recognize is that whether it's the kyphosis or just an inability to move through the thoracic spine, not only does that contribute to pain in the neck and the low back, but it really limits our ability to breathe. So we're going to start by checking our awareness and our motion through our breath itself. And for this practice, I do want you to have a couple of towels handy. And the other thing you're going to need is some type of a ball, like a squishy, nice ball. This is about 8-inch. It could be a little bit bigger because we're going to put it right about here. So grab those things if you need to, and then I will meet you down on your belly. So slither on down. Take a moment to either rest on your chin or your forehead. Feel free to jelly roll your legs side to side to let the thighs find the ground. You can shift your hips from side to side. Wherever your arms want to be, to bring more relaxation into the shoulders. And then begin to feel the front of your body, particularly your ribs. You might even feel some compression in your ribs. So start to think of your ribs as a physical extension of your thoracic spine. If you can feel your ribs moving, that's carrying you right into your thoracic spine. We're going to check that area in the front first. So now as you breathe in, notice if you feel any movement between the floor and the front of the rib cage. There might be the feeling of like more compression or your rib cage pressing into the ground as you breathe in. And this feeling as if your ribs are gently relaxing, the floor is coming up into the ribs as you breathe out. So continue that. As you do this, what I want to mention is that many people are either chest breathers all the way up or belly breathers all the way down. So what we really want to focus on is breathing in the rib cage, so above the diaphragm, what we call the thoracic cavity. And the floor is one of the best ways to feel. Are we really doing that? Can you feel your front ribs moving? And is that movement on the inhale a forward movement, like your spine is elongating towards the crown of the head? Is it upward? Is it outward to the sides? And that complete relaxation, just letting the ribs fall into the ground as you breathe out. Can you sense that both the left and the right side of the rib cage are moving? Like you can feel the space between the ribs. As you're breathing in, the intercostal muscles are moving. And then releasing once again. Take one more round of breath. And then we're going to roll over onto our backside, however you want to do that. Flip, flop, any way you need to. So from the back side, I encourage you to bend your knees and place your feet on the floor so the low back can be relaxed and comfortable. And just as we did with the front, notice what parts of the back body are touching the ground. And take your awareness into the back of the rib cage. And we have probably more sensitivity in the front now because we're breathing there, but let your mind's eye try to stay present in the backs of the ribs. Any of the places that are touching the floor. And you might even feel your shoulder blades. Think of those as another extension of your thoracic spine. And same thing as you breathe in, feel as if you're spreading your ribs and gently pushing them into the ground underneath you. As you breathe out, just let the whole back rib cage land on the ground. So let the floor be sensitive to the movement of your back ribs as you breathe. And now you can even feel the spine itself coming right up the center through the ribs. And check again, is it more of a movement upward into the floor? Is it outward to the sides? Do you feel more movement in the left or the right? Nice full deep breaths without forcing anything. You can always go back to your natural breath. Full and deep on the inhale, complete exhale. And then relax once again. Now I'm going to have you take your left hand to your left side and think of just your left lung and the left side of your rib cage. So if we divided the body in half from your nose to the base of your spine, everything to the left of that. And you can wrap your hand around your ribs, however you can get a hold of them. And I want you to think of breathing into just the left lung. And out to the side into your hands. So now you might feel movement in the front where we felt the ribs pressing into the floor when we were on our belly. We've still got the ground underneath the back ribs, but also to the side now. Focusing on just that left lung. Feel it like a big balloon. And your hand can help you to feel the movement. But if you'd like to add a little bit more, we're going to start to explore how the spine itself moves. So as you breathe into the left lung, I want you to gently press your left ribs out to the left side, or think of pressing them into your left hand. So you're lengthening the left waist from the hip to the armpit. And breathe out, release that. So this is one of the important movements that the thoracic spine does for us. It laterally or side bends us. Use your inhale. Fill that left lung and push it out. And then if we want to add a little bit more to this, you could take your left hand, instead of keeping it on your body to feel it, reach the left hand overhead, but still think of your breath initiating this, taking the left ribs out to the side and releasing back to center. The other part of our body that we can use is our left leg. You might take that out long, shake it out. Reach your left arm and leg away from one another, but remember, you're moving from your torso, from your ribs. Press them out. And release completely. Let the breath fill that left side. Stretch it out, feel it. Release, relax. Take one more into this lateral bend. Open up the left side, and you can also stop there and hold, and notice how your right side is compressed. So there's going to be a shortening in the right waist. Take a few breaths now, holding that long line through your left side. You could even place your right hand on your left ribs now. Breathing into the palm of your right hand. And releasing, still focusing. It might even be easier now to focus your breath into your left lung because that right lung is compressed. And let that go. Take your arm down, bend your knee again, and place both feet on the floor. And just take a moment to feel the two sides of your body. the magic moment that we give ourselves time to appreciate. And we'll do the same thing on the opposite side. So you can use your right hand, place it on your right ribs. And sometimes it's hard to locate if you're not used to this one lung breathing. So use your hand. Think of gently pressing your right ribs into your hand and then releasing. So we're breathing from the diaphragm, which is that engine of breath that's just underneath the bottom of the ribs. It actually attaches to your 12th vertebrae in your thoracic spine. So they have a very intimate relationship, your thoracic spine and your diaphragm. And then if you're starting to feel that movement through the right side, do a little bit more by pressing the right ribs into the hand. So take your right ribs out to the right side. You'll notice now that I'm facing the opposite, the left waist will shorten. And release that. Just sliding your right ribs out to the side as you breathe in. And releasing. So we're doing this nice easy side bend. The weight of the head is supported and the weight of the pelvis. So the low back and the neck are supported, and you can really focus on moving from the center, your juicy center, the juicy center of your sandwich. If you want to add a little bit more, you can reach your right arm overhead and reach for your fingers as you press the right ribs out. Let that go. And maybe you want to add the leg into that too. Take the right leg long. Reach arm and leg away from one another, lengthening the whole right side body. Breathing into your right lung and releasing. So by far my favorite way to mobilize the thoracic spine is with the breath, because it's a natural response for the thoracic spine to move when we breathe correctly. It's also an opportunity to see if we are breathing correctly. But keep filling that right lung. Maybe take a moment to come into that full right side stretch. Take a few breaths. You can take your left hand on your right ribs. See if you can feel your right ribs moving. You can even put your fingers between them a little bit, right? Feel those intercostal muscles between the ribs. They slide and glide on each other. And then relax that. Take your arm back down, take your leg back. Pause for a moment. And then we're going to come onto all fours. Next part of the mobilization, we're going to be in this table pose. So wrists are underneath the shoulders. If you have any issue being on your wrists, you can also make a fist, or you could do forearms. Although long arms are a little bit better if you can be there. So the next thing we're going to do is so we did the side bending, the lateral bending. The next one we're going to do is to go into the kyphosis, that curve. So that's actually called flexion of the spine. But what we want to try to do is to bring the movement into the rib cage. If you take your tailbone and lift your tailbone up slightly, so we're taking the pelvis into a little bit of an anterior tilt. So think of tilting the front of the pelvis down towards the ground. Hold that, and now as you breathe in, lift your rib cage and think of lifting your ribs and your shoulder blades. And as you breathe out, drop down. The other way I think of it is my shoulder blades are sliding away from one another. So typically when we do this, we're slumped and the muscles are laxed, but what you'll find is a lot of the movement is actually coming from your lumbar spine because you're tilting your tail down. If you can, I want you to keep the tail tilted slightly upward. So you're really having to take that mobility into the T-spine. Exhale, release. You can help it along by pushing your hands into the ground. Slide those shoulder blades away from the spine. Think of lifting from right in the center of the back of the heart. Spread your ribs up. Drop them down. And watch that we're not drawing that tail down as we do it. That feels good too, I know. But for now, focus on moving from the thoracic spine. Spread the ribs as you breathe in. You're breathing into your back body. And release. Let's do one more there. This last one, hold it for a few breaths. See if you can breathe into the back body. Let your neck relax. So I know one of the big movements in yoga is cat-cow. And what I so often see is cat-cow is all about the mobility in the lumbar spine and the neck. So we're making this about your T-spine. So the next part we're going to do is we'll go into extension of the spine, which would be like a back bend. But I want you now to take your tailbone and draw it down towards the ground. So it's a posterior tilt of the pelvis, just a little bit. Take that tailbone down. And now as you breathe in, think of the front of your rib cage and bring it forward and upward. So tailbone will stay down and you're going to front of the ribs, like you're sliding your rib cage forward and then release it. So rib cage forward in the front body. Think of filling the front body. Slide your ribs and your lungs forward. Release. And I'm trying not to go into that heavy lumbar that where the butt is lifting up, right? So keep the tailbone down heavy, even if it limits your mobility. Make this movement from the whole circumference of your rib cage. Something that might help you here is you can, as you inhale, let your shoulder blades collapse towards the center of your spine. So you're squeezing the back body and opening the front body. And then release it again. But think of breathing from your navel center all the way to the sternal notch. Slide that area forward and upward. And release. One more. All right, we'll get off of our hands and knees. And this is where we're going to need the ball, so you can bring that ball in a moment. But before we use the ball, we're going to use the towels. We're going to continue into the back bend because generally most of us need the back bend more than we need to practice the kyphosis move. They're both good though. So what I'm going to encourage you to do is take some towels, blankets, whatever you want. We're going to put them underneath the front of the pelvis. And as I do this, it'll make more sense. Hopefully you'll feel it too. You might need one, you might need two. I'm going to start with one, and it's going to go all the way down so that if I've got it in the right place, what it should feel like is I'm in that where we were here and we were tilting the tailbone down towards the ground a little bit. That's where I want to be. So if I have it too high on the belly, doesn't help me so much. And if I have it too far down the thighs, then I'm already in that lumbar curve. So I want to just place it right across the front of the pelvis. And if it's not enough, add a second towel. So you should feel like you're long through your low back. See how that feels. And let your body come down, let your forehead come down, just like where we were breathing in the beginning. Can you let your low back be long? So the front of your hip creases almost feel as if they're hanging towards the floor and the tailbone's hanging towards the floor. Front of the pelvis heavy. Take your arms into sort of a V position next to your body. And then when you're ready, breathe into the front of the ribs like you were earlier, pushing them into the floor. But as you lengthen forward, also lift slightly up. And then breathe out and come down. Relax. If you'd rather turn onto one cheek, you can. Otherwise, you can stay in the center. So what you may notice is when you're coming up, if you're feeling a lot of compression in the low back, then either we need to be higher, which is actually my case, or you just don't have quite that right spot so that your tailbone is hanging down. So right across the front. There we go. So inhale into the chest and float forward and upward. Keep the low back long. Exhale. Come back down. So again, think of it as the circumference of your rib cage is coming forward and lifting up, and that low back is staying in a neutral, long position. And come down. Take your time. Explore. And we have a lot less mobility as far as this movement goes, as far as this extended movement goes, in the thoracic spine. Generally, when we do this, it's all neck and low back. So take your time and explore it. Can you really backbend from the center, from that juicy center? Last one, you might even take it up and notice. So you might feel that compression in your ribs. If you're holding it, think on an exhale, draw the tailbone down to lengthen the low back. Might even gently press the fronts of your thighs down. Inhale into the ribs and bring them forward. And exhale. Release it down. And that's really nice too if you do tend to have any issues with your neck or your low back, because we're not compressing those in any way. Come back down onto the ground, take whatever is underneath you out. Let the whole front body connect with the ground. Now we're going to move into a movement that's more of a rotation with a lift. So we want to keep the idea of lifting from the thoracic spine. So what I'd like you to do is gently press the front of your pelvis or your tailbone downward. And then you're going to come up onto your right fingertips, bend your elbow, lift your elbow. As you breathe in, slowly think of lifting your right elbow as you breathe into your right ribs or lung. And then just look out at your elbow. And exhale. Come down, let the elbow land. So I like to be on my fingertips. You can also be on your palm, but there's more sensation for the body when you're on fingertips. So breathe into your right lung. Feel the ribs just like we did earlier in the side bend. Lift the elbow. Lengthen that right side and turn. And exhale. Come back down. So trying to keep the low back long. What helps me a lot is before I lift, I gently push the tailbone down, press the front of the pelvis into the ground, and then inhale. Lift and rotate. So you should feel like you're lifting your ribs. Exhale, come down. Fingertips down. You can try readjusting your hand. Maybe you want it further back towards your feet or further forward. You can come to your end point of motion and hold for a few breaths. Check to see your neck is long. That's the other thing, is I really try to initiate instead of your head turning first. Can you keep your nose in line with your collarbones, right in the center of them, and let your torso rotate and your head is just following along. And coming back down. Relax, take your right arm next to your left arm. Feel free to shake it out a little bit. So the thoracic spine are really important muscles in the muscles in rotation. So this is our rotational movement. We'll do another one as well. But let's try the other side. I'm going to turn so you're seeing me, but resting first. Coming onto your left fingertips, right hand can be at your side. Begin to breathe into your left lung, and as you do so, lift your left elbow up. Maybe first just slightly turn towards the left. And think of lifting the head of the arm bone, the shoulder. So if you move from your shoulder and your ribs as opposed to just your head turning, lift the shoulder, lift the ribs, turn the ribs. As you breathe in, breathe out and land. Or just the idea of using your breath again. Like you're inflating the left lung, and as you inflate it, there's a buoyancy and it lifts up, and you're just going to look over at your elbow. Come down and relax. keeping that tailbone long. So you'll notice if you start to feel the pinching in your low back, press the front of the pelvis down, tailbone down towards the ground. Keep that low back long. Let the movement come from the juicy center. Feel free to take another one. Lift up and hold if you'd like. Breathing into your left lung. You can lengthen the low back, pressing down. Maybe come up a little bit higher to your end point. Sending your breath into your left lung. And come down. And pause. Take both hands underneath you for a moment. Press into your hands. And come to all fours, and then just take your spine, think of your rib cage, and take your rib cage for a little dance. So you can push out to the sides. We did those side bends, right? But now we get to do it more playfully. You can also bring your ribs forward. You could lift your ribs up. Any of those motions. Think of taking your ribs for a little swim. They'll move around in circles. You can drop the front of the body, and as you do so, squeeze your shoulder blades on your back. Push out to one side, push out to the other side. And your head and your pelvis, we're not locking them in. Let them respond. But let the center of the spine decide which direction you're going. Okay. And then we're going to be doing another rotational movement. This one, again, we will be on our forearms and our knees. So if you want extra padding underneath your knees, you can do that. There's two ways to do this one. If it's comfortable for you to come into a child's pose, I'm going to encourage you to do that. So you're letting your hips fall back towards your heels. If not, then you're going to come a little bit more forward. Your buttocks might be more up in the air, and that is fine too. You're going to let your head come down to the ground, either here or here, and then put your head on your forearm. If that's still not enough, feel free to bring the towel in and put your head on a towel. So we're not feeling like our neck is being strained in any way. So you're here with your buttocks slightly up, or you can let your butt fall back towards your heels. Take your left hand to your left shoulder. Begin to breathe into your left ribs again. Now, as you breathe into your left ribs and lung, lift your left elbow and rotate to look out. And as you breathe out, drop it back down. See if you can start the movement from your rib cage. The elbow can lift too. So you're here, or if you're more in this position, that's fine too. You can try both. But fill the left side and rotate. Drop down, relax. If having your hand on your shoulder is too much, I also know you can do it with your arm on the ground like we did earlier and just extend your arm. But I really like to take the arm muscles out of it and really feel like it's your rib cage turning. This one will strengthen too, particularly if you take it into a hold. Let it come down and land. Take that arm down. Maybe reach both arms forward, stretch out. And I'm going to switch around to the other side. We'll do our rotation the other way. So that towel could be under your head. You can also just use your forearm. If it's comfortable to come into child's pose, drop all the way back, bum towards your heels. Otherwise, keep it lifted a little bit. Left arm on the ground, take your right hand to your right shoulder. Or maybe touch your right ribs first. Locate that area. Right lung, breathe into your right lung, and as you do so, think of lifting the elbow, but you're lifting the elbow by rotating the torso, rotating the rib cage. Exhale, come down. And what you'll notice is you won't have as much mobility because or not rotating from the low back. We only have the thoracic area. The pelvis is staying in one position. Lifting up. And your forehead is resting. I try not to strain the neck, so I just kind of roll the head. Some people lift up. You're welcome to do that if you'd like, but I feel like I'm just working on rotating the torso on inhale and dropping it down. You can take it to your end point and hold. And drop it down and relax. This next one, we're going to come back onto our knees and shins again, but we're going to drop down to the forearms. And you're going to take forearms to the ground, elbows about as wide as the shoulders, and take your palms together like prayer hands. You can drop your head to the ground. If it doesn't touch the ground and you want to use something to support it, please feel free to. You can put that towel underneath it. And now, with the palms gently pressing together, take a breath into the front of the ribs again. So this is another one to bring us out of that kyphosis, that rounded back. And as you breathe into the front ribs, draw your front ribs down towards the ground and forward, and also bend into your elbows and bring the thumbs towards the neck just as far as you can go. And as you breathe out, release the hands down, release the rib cage upward. So as you breathe in, ribs are coming down towards the floor. Hands are going to reach towards the back of the neck. And breathe out, release. You're definitely going to feel your low back come into the arch as well. But notice how your ribs and the fronts of the arms, that whole front chest area is getting a nice stretch. And you might take this one into that final position. Think of sliding your elbows forward. If the prayer hands don't want to stay together, you can also just place your hands on your back somewhere, taking the hands apart. But hold that for a few breaths. Think of lengthening your tailbone down towards the ground. Draw the tail towards the earth and the ribs towards the hands and the ground. So ribs forward and down, tail down. See if you can locate your rib cage. You might feel that little bit of compression in the backs of the ribs, but all that space in the front of the ribs. Taking a moment just to breathe there. Breathe all the way through to the top of your inhale. Notice that full sense of expansion at that space at the top of the inhale. And let it all go. Release your hands back down to the ground. And slowly walk up. Continuing in that fashion of back bending, we're going to come back down onto the ground. And this is where you will need the ball. We're getting fun with a little bit of ball action here. So take the ball. And it's going to go right underneath your chest. So I know ladies have to position it correctly with their ladies. So what you don't want to do, though, is you don't want the ball all the way up on your sternal notch, because it's going to come into your throat when we start to roll. So down here more. Whatever size you got. Basketballs are generally too hard, by the way. You need a softer ball than that. Put it underneath there. Let your head fall down. Let your arms fall. Feel free to shake out your legs. Shift your hips so your lower body's relaxed. And just feel the way you can let your front chest fall into the ball. But the ball should maintain some of its shape so that we can roll it. And then next time you're ready, I want you to try to roll the ball forward with your chest. So as you breathe in, push the ball forward. And you may lift your head, or your head's going to lift as a result of rolling the ball forward. But I'm not lifting my neck way up. It's not a neck movement. It's a roll the ball forward. More than likely, you'll do it once or twice and say that's not the right position. Mine's a little high. I have to go down more towards the bottoms of my ribs. Let your arms relax. So the arms are not pushing you. It's forward and upward with the rib cage. And then as you breathe out, let the forehead land. Let the whole weight of the torso fall into the ball. Relax the shoulders. Roll the ball. So really, I'm not just pushing into it to lift up. I'm trying to roll it forward. As much as you can. Keep the muscles in the buttocks and the legs relaxed. We shouldn't have to recruit those. And that's going to help you to relax the low back too. But if you're getting the compression in the low back as you're doing this, draw that tailbone down just a little bit. Lengthen the low back. And then try again to isolate the muscles in and around the rib cage. So that thoracic spine. Feel free to take one or two more. You might hold at the top of your inhale. And just keep rolling that ball forward. So some of us, me, very limited in our thoracic spine mobility. So the thoracic spine, a lot of times we're less mobile when it comes to taking these back bends because of the rounding that we do all day. And then come down and relax. Take that ball out from underneath you. We're going to use it again though in just a moment. The last movement we're going to do is seated. And what's important when we're seated is that we're not going into that rounding of the back. So what can help you when we're seated to do that, you can also go into a chair, but is to sit the edge of your tush on something, anything. So that what happens is I'm not sitting all the way on it, but I'm going to scooch to the edge so that my pelvis feels like it wants to tilt slightly forward, and that'll keep the low back long. If your legs don't want to be extended, you can bend your knees, or you can take the second towel and put it underneath your knees, just so you can relax if you're a little bit tighter through your hamstrings. So it might look something like this. And come up and just breathe. Think of breathing from the base of your spine all the way to the crown of the head. So we want to be comfortable in our seated position without folding forward, right? So keep the head of the arm bones back, maybe even just roll your shoulders around for a moment. And we're going to do both a side bend and a rotation from this position. But first, just breathe. Maybe take the base of the skull back a little so your ears are over your shoulders. And then you're going to take opposite hand to elbow. Feel yourself as you're breathing into your ribs. Notice how your ribs are expanding outward and upward. And as you breathe out, they just gently collapse towards the spine. And then next time you breathe in, feel your left side. And rotate to the left. As you breathe out, come back to center. So the pelvis is already stabilized just because it's planted in the earth. And I'm going to try to keep my gaze so that my nose is right over the center of my sternum. So I'm not turning my head. I'm really focusing on telling the brain to make this movement from the T-spine. Inhaling and rotating. And exhaling back. Let's do just to the left first. Fill and create space through your whole rib cage and then rotate. Come back. Release. So I find the breath really helps me to increase that mobility, to create the space first by beginning the breath in and then start the movement. If this arm position feels okay and you want a little bit more stretch, you can keep the arms opposite hand towards elbow, but take the hands over your head. So rest your arms on your head. Just watch you're not pushing your turtle head forward. So keep the ears in line with the shoulders. And you get a little more stretch through the sides of the upper thoracic spine. So think of your spine almost like a spiral staircase. And the base of the spine is staying where it is. The top of the spine is staying where it is, so your neck and your low back. And the spiral is right in the center, right? Those staircases have to be stabilized at the top and the bottom, and the rotation is in the middle. And just take one or two more to the left, or you can hold that there. And pause. Relax the arms down. You can roll the shoulders out. While we're in this position, we're also going to do our lateral bend to the left side, or for the left side, let's do first. So with this one, you can take your right hand to the ground. Gently use that for support. Start with your left hand at your shoulder. And then as you breathe into the left lung, or if you want, you can place your left hand on your left lung. Just like we did when we were on the floor in the very beginning, gently stick the left ribs out as you breathe in, and then breathe out and come back. So the reason why I'm not having you extend your arm is because I often see when people are doing side bends in yoga, the arm is like this, and the side body hasn't gone anywhere. The T-spine hasn't moved. So I really want you to feel that it's coming from your spine. You should feel the compression in your right side. And then if that's happening as you breathe into that left side, and maybe you just stretch through the left arm to create a little more length from the left hip to the armpit. And breathe out and come back. Breathe in, feel the left lung. The extension of the arm is just sort of an organic component of opening up that left side. Also notice the compression in the right. So it's not just this. It's you're drawing your right armpit towards your right waist and your left armpit and waist away from one another. Feel free to do one or two more, or find your hold and pause. If you're holding, think of taking the left shoulder blade back a little bit, like you're opening up your armpit. You can even take your gaze up towards the sky. Locate and land in that left lung. Give it all of your loving attention. Take it down and relax. Take that magic moment to notice the two sides of your body. And if you need to locate yourself at the base of your spine, your pelvis, do that so that we're not slumping. And we'll do the second side. So it starts by taking opposite hand to elbow. If you remember which one hand was on top, you can switch it, but not a big deal. Plug your arm bones into your shoulder blades because that's going to help you to feel that thoracic spine too. So arms aren't out here, but I'm going to feel my shoulder blades, and then breathe into your right side and your left. Feel your whole rib cage fill. Next time you breathe in, rotate to the right. Breathe out, come back. And think of all of those little spiney processes, those tiny little spine bones rotating, coming back, each individual one, slowly moving, rotating, and then releasing back to center. I'm not turning my head, I'm keeping my nose right over my navel center or over my sternal notch. And if this feels okay and you want a little bit more, place your hands on the top of the head or your arms. Watch that the head's not forward though. Draw your ears back, your skull back. And rotate from here on your inhale. Fill the ribs and let them follow that pattern to the right, that movement pattern, and release. And just play with how far you can go without forcing anything. And can your breath help you to create more of a pleasurable experience coming into this rotation? It's another one I never get in yoga. We generally rotate on the exhale. You can try that. And for me, it's never made sense because when I rotate on the exhale, there's no space to go anywhere. Or fill and turn. Take one more, and if you want, you can hold for a few breaths. And come back to the center. Relax your arms wherever they are. Roll your shoulders out. And we'll be doing our side bend this time, bending to the left, opening up the right side. So the left hand can go to the ground, realign your spine, take your gaze forward, and you might take your right hand to your rib cage. Breathe into your right ribs. Think of sticking them out to the side, and then breathe out and relax. This is not about moving my arm. It's about moving the upper waist. And then if it feels okay, take your hand to your shoulder. And you can gently reach your elbow up to get a little more stretch. But you're still moving from your right side. Breath in, lifts and levitates the right ribs, the side body. Come back. If that's all feeling smooth as silk, then go ahead and reach through your arm just to add a little more stretching for the right side. Still letting the breath initiate the movement. And you'll notice it's going to be easier to breathe into your right lung now as opposed to your left, because the left, once again, is compressed. So if you'd stop and take that hold, and your hand could be at your shoulder too, it's going to be hard to access the left lung where the right lung is saying, I'm here, I'm here. Feel where your ribs come into your spine. And relax it down. Finally, we're going to finish back down on the ground. If you don't have the ball, you can just come onto your back. But otherwise, we're going to do a little bit of mobility with the ball. You're definitely going to need something, a pillow, a couple of towels underneath your head as well if you have the ball. So go ahead and set those down. And we're going to take the ball, and it's going to go right in the center of your upper back. So if you feel where your shoulder blades are, usually right around the bottom tips of the shoulder blades is a good spot. So we don't want to be way down here because that's going to cause too much arch in your lumbar spine. And we don't want to be way up here because then the neck is not in a good place either. So think of the back of the heart, or if you can find your shoulder blades, that's a good way to locate. Ladies, your bra strap is good as well. So put that down, bend your knees, place your feet on the ground, and it's going to be really important that you have enough height so that your head is not dropping back into Never Never Land. So if you need more than one towel or pillow, grab it. You want to keep your neck in a neutral position. But you've got that ball underneath you, and you'll know if it's too low down towards your pelvis, then that back, your low back is going to be in a big old arch and it's not going to be comfortable. So find that spot right behind the back of the heart door. Let your arms come out to your sides or they can rest on your body. Focus now on your breath out. As you breathe out, let the low back land or be long. Feel how your low back can just fall into the floor every time you breathe out. So relax the low back first. Breathe out. Feel like it's just gently pressing into the ground. I also like to let my inner knees fall together. Really a sign of relaxation for the space from the toes to through the low back and the pelvis. And then maybe take your hands to your ribs if you're not already there. And this is more of a playful movement. But when we were on all fours and we were moving in circles from our spine, we can do that again. But this time, the spine is on the ball, the thoracic spine, and you can push out to one side and the other. You can lift the front of the ribs. You can push the ball into the ball and push into the floor, which will collapse the front ribs and stretch the back ribs. But just like we did with the chest earlier, moving the ball, try to just gently move the ball around from the thoracic spine. The position of your body will really limit you to some extent. So you may not feel as mobile as you're used to being in your spine. Land and locate yourself in your ribs, the back ribs where you're touching the ball, maybe the front ribs, either with your hands or just through your breath. Be as playful and curious as you'd like. Imagine water just washing over your body. I like to think of myself like a strand of seaweed, and that gentle wave-like pattern of the water moving the seaweed. Moving from the center. Your shoulders are relaxed, your head is fully supported. If your head and neck want to respond to the movement, don't stop them, let them be whatever they want to be. If your arms want to move, shoulders, and maybe even your pelvis, but you're allowing your center of your spine, that juicy center, to decide where your lower and your upper body are going. Everything is just following along. And then land and be still. Just pause, letting the whole weight of your body rest on the ball. Breathing into the rib cage. When you're ready to come off the ball, and if you'd like to stay here in Shavasana, if you're completely comfortable, please enjoy this space because it is a nice chest opener. Otherwise, you're going to roll your knees to one side, whichever side you roll your knees to. Also roll your arms that way. Come off of the ball. This is always like an interesting experience, coming back onto your back after having that underneath you. Just notice what it feels like to have your back flat on the ground. And go into your natural, spontaneous breath. And feel where that spontaneous breath is landing. If you're normally more of a chest breather or belly breather, is there more of a sense of awareness of breathing into the wholeness of your lungs, front ribs, side ribs, and back ribs? Enjoy that space for as long as you'd like. Thanks for playing with your juicy center with me. Peace, joy, and love and light to all of you, and keeping in our prayers all of those affected by the war in the Ukraine.